Well, hello there. This is Shane from Shane's Books and Review, and I hope you are having a great day today. It's Friday. We made it through the week. Small round of applause for ourselves. And now the weekend is upon us, and I hope that you have a good one. Today we're going to be talking about The Book of M, wrote by Peng Sheperd. Now, as mentioned on Monday, and I tried not to make it come off this way, but I did. Sorry. But it's not really my kind of a read. Now, it does fit a lot of the categories that I like, but the reason why is because of all the exposition in the beginning. Oh my god. I don't want to break the book apart either, because it is a good read, and it is a good book, but it's just not so much for me. So with that out of the way, I'll just push it out there. Let's get on with talking about the book. Now, The Book of M is a very interesting book in a couple of different regards. One, it has to do with the way that things start and the way that things wrap up in the book. There's a vast wasteland in the middle. It was kind of a hard thing for me personally to get through because it wasn't interesting to me. There was a point in time where stories were very linear. I'm going to describe this book as a non-linear read. We don't get all the story on how things started at the very beginning of the book, and that's a common thing these days. And that's fine, because that was actually the only reason why I continued to read this thing. And I'm glad that I did, because quite frankly and honestly and upfront and all those sorts of things, whatever you want to insert here, the end was definitely worth the means. The juice was worth the squeeze. The long of it all is this. In the beginning, Max and her duder, her boyfriend, Henri, is not a name, but it sounds like Henri. I will put the name right here. Ori. Right over my face. Came with the name that I cannot remember over it. Max and her boyfriend have developed their own ways of dealing with things. Essentially what happened is there was a day. On that day, this one guy loses his shadow in India. Amazing. For those of you that don't know, there is a celebration day in some places where the sun is directly overhead. There's a specific line that goes across the earth, and the sun is directly overhead on that, and at exact noon, shadows disappear. It's a thing that happens. There's actually sculptures that you can find that have been designed so that they look like complete weirdness until these things happen. And then it makes sense. It's really cool. This kid loses his shadow. He's living with his brothers, and the media starts to make a circus around him because of such a miraculous thing. He doesn't have a shadow. And everything seems hunky-dory fine until he starts to lose his memory. And then it becomes oh my goodness. But then this thing starts to spread, and before long it's a global type of epidemic. Come to find out, all the memories aren't stored in the brains, they were stored in the shadow. That was one of the more interesting things. We think of the shadow as just being where our bodies or something is blocking the light source and causing the absence of light on the other side of it, and then that forms this shadow of whatever's in front of it, right? Come to find out, no, not at all. In fact, our memories are in the shadows, and now that we don't have shadows, most people anyway, their memories fade away and they forget things. It's almost like a very advanced case of Alzheimer's, and these poor people, they forget how to open doors, they forget how to eat, how to breathe, they just have a hard way to go. So Max and her guy friend, they end up coming with a very unique way of finding out if either person has forgotten anything, and they have a ritual that they do on a daily basis. Ori, that's the guy's name. Max and Ori have come up with a very unique way of handling this memory situation. They have a ritual that they do pretty much every time they take a nap or wake up, or multiple times during the day, to let each other know that they remember each other. Max ends up losing her shadow, and Ori not so much, but Ori is the one that ends up taking on the responsibility of caring for her. It's on one of his trips out of the house to go forage and find supplies and this, that, and the other. Max decides that she's going to go exploring. She's going to go somewhere she's never been. And yeah, parts of that front part of the story were absolutely heartbreaking in a lot of ways, because Ori had to come up with this set list of rules of, don't open the door, don't do this, you can't use the gun, you can use this size knife, all these sorts of things. And it was a mutual arrangement on Max's and Ori's part for safety's sake. It wasn't so much he was controlling her, but in a way I could see where that would have become what was happening. He's so pent up and he has so much anxiety about what's going on that I could easily see him starting to try to control her so that he felt like he was still in control of himself. He seemed to be one of those sorts. Already, after reading the first few pages of the book, I didn't care for the guy. That was kind of a letdown for myself. It's not that I judged him or the book, it's that type of person really is not interesting to me at all. Now, if we fast forward a little bit, he ends up getting mugged, and by the time that he gets back to the house where they're supposed to be at, she's gone. And he figures out through, little clues here and there that it was a very purposeful gone. She ends up hooking up with a band of travelers that are in an RV before it's all over with, and there's some very fantastical things that happen here in her story. In his story, he ends up going to Washington and meets up with an old friend that we find out it's an old friend through a flashback, and where everything started for Max and Ori, being that everybody was all huddled up together in a hotel lobby because they were there for a wedding, and it just so happens that a couple of people that would or should, might be, maybe not be there at Washington were also at the same party, the same engagement. So there was some familiarity for Ori whenever he got to Washington and some surprises. But that really wasn't the interesting part of the book. He gets there and there's this war that's going on, and essentially, the general's just trying to get a bunch of books together so they can head to this place that they've heard about. I didn't really dig this part of the story at all. It was really kind of hard to get through. There were some unique things that were there, but it was almost like this part of the book was undefined in the author's mind. And because of that, there was a lot of jump scenes and back and forth, and more so than in the rest of the book at this point when he was in Washington. So that was one of the reasons why I was having trouble getting through it. Come to find out, this other thing, this other creature, but just a guy, was also one of the people at the party. It's one of those things, if you read it, you'll figure that out. It's not like a big hidden plot twist, didn't see it coming. It wasn't anything like that. It was more over what we're going to talk about here in a second. They do eventually get all their books that they want to take or can expect to take and then head out. I do want to give Peng Sheperd a little bit of credit here, though, because instead of have him go with that, she did stay true to the character of Ori, in that he wanted to continue to look for his partner. He wanted to continue to look for Max. That part of that section that was so hard for me to get through was actually a really well done area from his point of view, and it was actually very realistic too, in the feelings, the doubts, and the unknown. She did a good job of capturing that. Now, if we move past that, the story arc and the things that are happening, there's a couple of other factions that are in here. There's a sect of people that want to encourage those that have lost their shadows to transcend. They themselves want to transcend. They think that there's a magical power in this. And at first, when we hear about this group, they're thought of as if they were abducting and just killing the people, but that's not really what was happening. In fact, they are a fanatical religious group that just wants to touch what's going to happen. They just want to be there for it. They want themselves to be able to do the same thing. And the thing that has that stemmed is that it wasn't missed on some of the people that started that, I guess, because it really wasn't explored, was our original person that was in India that lost their shadow. He had forgot about the market that he had been staying in for a very long time. The market, everything disappeared. People, everything, gone. And there's some other instances as well in the book of like cities that start jumping. Portions of them start moving up and down, or really unique ways of getting power, because quite apparently these shadowless people, whenever they forget something, then remember it and then do that in the incorrect way, they're changing the world around them. So that was one of the more interesting ideas and concepts in the book. That was such a unique thing. And also the way that the book ended. I might have had some issues there. How could you, if I was in this author's shoes, how could I end a story like that? This was also true to the subject matter and to the characters, from individuals that have transformed into other items because of their belief of what they are or what they're trying to do, to Max and her final climax of how this is going to happen and what has happened. So overall, it was a interesting read. It had parts of it that were really hard to get through for me, but only because of ADHD and wondering how many times I'm going to have to go over the same concept of, yeah, sure, they lost their shadows, their memories are gone. Okay, now what? What are we doing? Nah, that's me and my impertinence and impatience in that regard when I'm reading. So in the end, there's going to be all kinds of things in this book still between the characters, character interactions with each other or lack thereof, and also sub-stories and subplots that were in the book. I'm still debating on if I'm going to even recommend the book. My Monday video and this video, these are the reasons why I'm going to give it a half recommendation instead of a full. And I think that that's fair, because this isn't going to be a book that's for everybody, not by any means. And it's very specialized. It has to do with the mind, it has to do with dystopia, it has to do with fantastical things that are happening around these people. And that is why I can't say, yeah, go for it, you're going to love it. because I have a feeling that this is one of those books that would probably have a knee-jerk reaction from a lot of individuals of, I absolutely love this thing, or I absolutely hate this thing. So I'm curious, which camp do you fall in if you have read it? Well, let me know down there in that comment box, and I'll get back with you on it. I'm happy that you guys and gals are here. Thank you so much for watching. Like, share, subscribe. This is Shane from Shane's Books and Review, and I will see you on Monday. Now, just before you go, do me one favor. Have a great weekend.